These two factors are general worldwide pattern of imperial culture. So imperial culture has got worldwide pattern. Remember this. So imperialism is vast. It is not working only in this country or only in some other country. It is working in different forms in different parts of the world. For that reason, it is called a worldwide pattern. Okay, of imperial culture. Imperial culture, suppose on 14th February, you are going to celebrate Valentine's Day. So is it a part of your culture? No, it is not your culture. But you are preparing to celebrate this culture. So why? You have received this cultural practice. And how is the imperial power working behind it? Suppose the corporates, the imperialist corporates, are printing cards. They are also importing flowers from different areas. And they are running the business of cards, that is, wish cards, then flowers, gift items. And you will purchase all those items and gift those items to your dear ones or near ones. Now, who is ultimately benefited by this culture or cultural practice? The corporates are benefited because they will make money, they will maximize their profit. This is called economic imperialism. With the help of culture, the imperialists are economically being benefited. So cultural imperialism is working in different forms in different countries of the world. Anyway, and a historical experience of resistance against empire. Historical experience of resistance against empire inform this book in ways that make it not just a sequel to Orientalism. So culture and imperialism is not a sequel to Orientalism, but an attempt to do something else. In both books, I have emphasized what, in a rather general way, I have called culture. So Edward Said has clarified that in both the books, that is in Orientalism and in Culture and Imperialism, he has defined culture. As I use the word culture means two things in particular. First of all, it means all those practices like the arts of description, communication, and representation that have relative autonomy from the economic, social, and political realms, and that often exist in aesthetic forms, one of whose principal aims is pleasure. So, what is your culture? The way you speak, the way you behave, or the way you analyze a things critically, or the way you look at a thing and judge it. All these things belong to your culture, or your sense of beauty, the things whom you love and the things whom you hate, and your approach to those things and the roles of those things in your life, your songs, your music, your dance, all these things belong to your culture. So culture has got an aesthetic value. Culture is an aesthetic entity. Suppose you paint picture. So your painting is a projection of how you think and what you think. So your painting is a manifestation of your cultural identity. So culture accommodates all the things that shape your life, that define your life, that also define your identity. Included, of course, are both the popular stock of lore about distant parts of the world and specialized knowledge available in such learned disciplines as ethnography, historiography, philology, sociology, and literary history. So every nation has got its history. Every nation has got its knowledge system, its ethnography, that is the study of culture, the study of human beings. Then historiography, that is you have your own history, political history, social history, moral history. You have your philosophy and philology, that is your science of your language. Sociology is also a very important part of a nation, of a community. And literary history, you have also literature. Literature may be of written form or oral form. Literature may not be always in written form. Literature may be in oral form. And oral literature is called orature. And written form literature is called literature. Actually, literature means write. So if you write, then it becomes literature. Your writing is your literature. So these things also belong to your culture. Since my exclusive focus here is on the modern Western empires of the 19th and 20th centuries, I have looked especially at cultural forms like the novel. So novel is a cultural form, which I believe were immensely important in the formation of imperial attitudes, references, and experiences. So mark this point, it is very important. So the books of literature is not for entertainment only. The books of literature is not a piece of aesthetics only. The books of literature are a very powerful cultural form. And these cultural forms may be used as a tool in the hands of the imperialists to imperialize a nation or to enslave a nation epistemologically. Actually, this is Edward Said's discovery. This is the important thing that Edward Said has taught us. And this is the point which makes difference in the study of literature before Said and after Said. That is, Said stands in between. Before Edward Said, we studied literature as a piece of aesthetics only. And we thought that literature was to entertain the people. But Edward Said taught us that literature is also used as a tool to rule your attitudes or to dominate on your likings and dislikings, your habits, your behavior. So this very discovery has made Edward Said great. And for that reason, the critics, especially post-colonial critics, believe that before Edward Said there was a different world, and after Edward Said we get a world in which we question the literature of the colonizers, the literature of the imperialists. So we now question. But before Edward Said's publication of Orientalism, We did not question the literary texts, but very deliberately, those literary texts used to shape our attitudes, used to uh, stereotype our behavior, and we turned into mimic men in the framework provided by the books of literature. I do not mean that only the novel was important, but that I consider it the aesthetic object whose connection to the expanding societies of Britain and France is particularly interesting to study. So you must not think that only novels are the tools of cultural imperialism. Even TV serials, for example, Barbie animation films. Are you acquainted with Barbie animation film? তোমরা কি বারবি অ্যানিমেশন ফিল্ম দেখো বা দেখেছো আগে?
Yes, sir.
ওকে।
জি স্যার।
সেখানে আমরা কি দেখছি? সেখানে দেখছি যে বারবি যে সে সুন্দরী, ফর্সা এবং সেখানে পরী আছে। পরীরা কেমন? ফর্সা। কোন পরী কি কালো হয়? কোন কালো পরী দেখেছো? কালো মানেই কালো মানেই ভূত, কালো মানেই পিশাচ। এই যে মেসেজটা দেওয়া হলো বারবিতে, যে বারবি সুন্দরী, সাদা চামড়া, শ্বেতাঙ্গিনী, সেখানে পরী আছে, সেই পরীরাও সব সাদা। তার মানে কালো যারা, আমরা যারা কালো, তারপরে আফ্রিকার, আমরা কালো মানে আমরা শ্যামবর্ণের, আফ্রিকার যারা কালো, এদের মধ্যে নাকি ফেইরি থাকতে পারে না, এদের নাকি ফেইরি টেইলস থাকতে পারে না। বোঝা গেছে? কারণ এই কার্টুন ফিল্মগুলোতে বা অ্যানিমেশন ফিল্মগুলোতে যে পরীদের আমরা দেখি, these fairies are never black. Their complexion is never tanned, or their complexion is not yellow. Their complexion is white. This is cultural racism. এটাই হলো racism. There is an idea is projected here in this animation film that whatever is positive, whatever is beautiful, whatever is miraculously powerful is white, and whatever is mischievous, whatever is harmful, or whatever is fearful is black. So in this way, this animation film is going on with a propaganda that black is bad and white is good. So why do I think like this? Or how do I learn to think like this? I have learned to think like this. I have learned to look at this film with suspicion because I have read Edward Said. And here lies the importance of Edward Said. So why should we read Edward Said? We should read Edward Said because Edward Said has taught us how to read literature, especially the literature of the colonizers, or how to, or why to suspect the literature of the colonizers. Okay. I do not mean that only the novel was important, but that I consider it the aesthetic object whose connection to the expanding societies of Britain and France is particularly interesting to study. The prototypical modern realistic novel is Robinson Crusoe, and certainly not accidentally, it is about a European who creates a fiefdom for himself on a distant non-European island. So it is very critical to approach this text. We must not approach this text naively. The text Robinson Crusoe. If you judge this text historically, you will find that the reflection of Renaissance, especially the attempt of the English to conquer the sea, is available here, is reflected here. So why did the English attempt to conquer the sea? Because at that time they thought that if they wanted to conquer the sea, they must if they wanted to conquer the world, they must conquer the sea, because sea was the only route to reach different countries, different parts of the world. And the British businessmen or the merchants went to different countries of the world by using the routes of the sea, and they were benefited. They made profit. They brought the profit to their country. They set up mills and factories there. And Britain was benefited from mercantile activities. And the sea helped them in this enterprise very much. For that reason, sea journey or the sea was a special attraction to the British rulers or the British people. So you will find the reflection of this very particular disposition of the British in this text. Suppose Robinson Crusoe's father wants that he should be a lawyer, he should study very seriously. But Robinson Crusoe does not remain at home. He every time tells a lie to his father and to his mother and goes to the sea. Though he repeatedly encountered storms and gales, he did not lose heart. Ultimately, he was left out in an island, and there he had to live for more than 27 years. But he did not live there as an impoverished person. He became a king there. So why did he become a king, and how did he become a king? He became a king by virtue of his intelligence, by virtue of his ability to survive in the changing situations. And what message does this text carry? This text carries the message that the English people are unique. They are different from the other people of the world. They have the ability to survive even in the adverse situations. They have the ability to transform an island into a kingdom. So in this way, Robinson Crusoe presents before the readers that the English people are racially unique, outstanding, and they deserve to be masters. We are not masters because we don't have the capacity or capability or ability that they have. They are adventurous. They are also very brave. They can take risk. For that reason, they deserve to be our master. Actually, this is the message that emanates from this text. And if you think of the relationship between Robinson Crusoe and Caliban, you can metaphorically interpret the relationship between the colonizers and the colonized, the master and the servant. The colonizers do never believe in relationship. They believe in domination and submission. They will dominate. They will exercise their hegemony upon the people. And the people will have to show their subjugation to them. This racist message is carried by this text. So you cannot take this text as a fantasy. You cannot take this text as a child story or a romantic text or a story of adventure. You cannot fantasize this text. You have to critically approach this text and analyze it from different perspectives. And then you will find that this is a racist text, it's a propaganda of colonialism, and it is in many ways trying to dominate on your mentality, on your attitudes, on your psychology. A great deal of recent criticism has concentrated on narrative fiction, yet very little attention has been paid to its position in history and world of empire. The readers of this book will quickly discover that narrative is critical to my argument here. My basic point being that stories are at heart of what explorers and novelists say about strange regions of the world. They also become the method colonized people use to assert their own identity and the existence of their own history. The main battle in imperialism over land, of course, but when it came to who owned the land, who had the right to settle, and what on it, who kept it going, who won it back, and who now plans its future. These issues were reflected, contested, and even for a time decided in narrative. So, what is narrative? Narrative, our history is our narrative. Our literature is our narrative. Our uh, religious books are our narratives. To the Muslims, Quran is the narrative. To the Hindus, their Ved or Bhagavad Gita is their narrative. To the Christians, Bible is their narrative. Now, what do we find in the narrative? In the narrative, we find the reflection of a community's plans, plans about present and plans about the future. We also learn about culture and cultural realities in the narratives. So if your narratives are manipulated or if your narratives are distorted, then it will also be misguided. So while the colonizers come to a country, they at first target the narratives of the people living there. And they make every possible attempt to distort that very narrative. And if it is possible to distort the narrative, then the people, that is, the followers of these narratives, will be misguided and puzzled. And while they would be puzzled, they would take resort to the narratives imported by the colonizers with them to that new country. So that is called intellectual slavery. That is, you will intellectually depend on the aesthetics and narratives of the colonizers. And in course of time, you will take up their narratives. You will speak like them. You will think like them. You will behave like them. You will eat like them. You will dream like them. That is, you will be transformed into other. You would not be the self. You would be other. This is called otherization process. This otherization process is done very successfully by these narratives. I just like to give you some examples from the historical realities of this subcontinent. আমি এই সাবকন্টিনেন্ট থেকে কিছু এক্সাম্পল দিলে এটা ভালো বুঝবে। যেমন ধরো আমাদের এখানে যে বিংশ শতাব্দীর শুরুর দিকে 1905 সালে কি হলো, বঙ্গভঙ্গ হলো। বঙ্গভঙ্গ হলো কেন? কারণ ব্রিটিশরা অজুহাত দিল যে এত বড় বঙ্গদেশ শাসন করা কঠিন, এটা ভাগ করলে ইকুয়াল রাইটস এনশিওর করা যাবে, সবাইকে নিশ্চিত করা যাবে। এটা ছিল তাদের অজুহাত। আবার আমাদের এই অংশের যারা বয়স্ক মুসলমান, তারা ভাবলো যে না, ভাগ করে ভালোই হয়েছে, ইংরেজরা এতদিন মুসলমানদের প্রতি তেমন মনোযোগ দেয়নি, কাজে ভাগ করে তারা প্রায়শ্চিত্ত করছে, কাজে ঠিকই আছে। এবং আমাদের এখানকার নবাব সলিমুল্লাহ, নাম শুনেছো নিশ্চয়, যিনি ঢাকা ইউনিভার্সিটির জন্য জায়গা দান করেছেন, তাই না? নিশ্চয়ই নাম শুনেছো নবাব সলিমুল্লাহ।
জি স্যার, জি স্যার।
এই সলিমুল্লাহ খান তিনি খুব খুশি হলেন যে মুসলমানদের জন্য একটা আলাদা রাষ্ট্র হবে, আলাদা দেশ হলো, পূর্ব বাংলা মুসলমানদের হলো। কিন্তু এতে হিন্দুরা খুবই কষ্ট পেল, কারণ হিন্দুরা কিন্তু এই উভয় বাংলায় ছিল সংখ্যালঘু, মুসলমানের সংখ্যায় বেশি ছিল। শিক্ষিত হিন্দুরা কলকাতায় থাকলেও তাদের চাকরি বাকরি বলো, ব্যবসাপাতি বলো, সব ছিল পূর্ব বাংলায়। এমনকি কলকাতার উকিলের মক্কেল ছিল সব কিন্তু এই পূর্ব বাংলায়। এখন এরা দেখলো যে এদের তো সব ব্যবসাপাতি বন্ধ হয়ে যাবে, এরা তো বিপদে পড়বে, তখন এরা হইচই শুরু করবে যে না, আমরা বঙ্গভঙ্গ চাই না। এবং যাই হোক, নানান আন্দোলনের মধ্য দিয়ে এই বঙ্গভঙ্গ আবার রদ হলো 1911 সালে। এতে নবাব সলিমুল্লাহ খান অনেক কষ্ট পেলেন, কষ্ট পেয়ে মনটা তার ভেঙে গেল, কিছুদিনের মধ্যে তিনি মারাও গেলেন। তো এই সময় যে মজার ব্যাপারগুলো হচ্ছিল, এই যে হট্টগোল বা আন্দোলন, সেই সময় কিন্তু আমাদের জাতীয়তা বোধ তৈরি হচ্ছিল, যে আমরা আসলে বাঙালি জাতি, বা আমরা ভারতীয়, আমরা এশীয়, এই যে বোধ, আমাদের আইডেন্টিটি, এটা তৈরি হচ্ছিল। কিন্তু ইন্টারেস্টিং ব্যাপার তৈরি হচ্ছিল কোন ছকে, কোন ছাঁচে। So it was getting prepared, or it was getting a formation or form in the framework of the colonizers, European colonizers. ওরা যে ন্যাশনালিজমের সংজ্ঞা নিয়ে এসেছে, সেই ছাঁচে আমাদের ন্যাশনালিজম তৈরি হচ্ছিল। ইন্টারেস্টিং ব্যাপার। আমি এরপরে আর একটা কথা বলবো, সেটা খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, যে এই ছাঁচে তখন আমাদের ন্যাশনালিজম তৈরি হচ্ছে। তাহলে আমাদের ন্যাশনালিজম তৈরি হচ্ছে কাদের ফ্রেমওয়ার্কে? পশ্চিমাদের ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক। তখন আমাদের এখান থেকে রবীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুর, জাপানের একজন বিখ্যাত স্কলার ছিলেন, নাম হলো ওকাকুরা ওকাকুরা কাকুজো, আর সিংহলের একজন পণ্ডিত লেখক, নাম হলো আনন্দ কুমার স্বামী। এরা তিনজন, এরা বললেন যে না, আমাদের জাতীয়তাবোধ তৈরি হবে আমাদের নিজেদের অ্যাস্থেটিক্স নিয়ে। Our nationalism will be formed, will be constructed in the framework of our own aesthetics, our own culture and cultural realities. এবং রবীন্দ্রনাথের তোমার সেই সময় তো আমার সোনার বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি, আমরা যেটাকে জাতীয় সঙ্গীত হিসেবে গাই, সেটা কিন্তু লেখা হলো ওই সময়। কেন? ওই যে ন্যাশনালিজম জাগ্রত করার জন্য, যে আমাদের বাংলাকে ভালোবাসি, আমাদের বাংলা হলো আমাদের আইডেন্টিটি, আমাদের বাঙালি কালচার হলো আইডেন্টিটি, সেটার উপর ভিত্তি করে তখন তৈরি হতে লাগে। কিন্তু বাঙালিরা তো কেউ হিন্দু, কেউ মুসলমান। এখন এখানেও ঝামেলা ছিল। 1772 আগে ওয়ারেন হেস্টিংস যে আইন করলেন, তার আগে এই দেশে মুসলমান ছিল, তারপরেও তো মুসলমান আছে, আমরাও মুসলমান আছি। 1772 আগে এখানকার মুসলমানরা ভাবতো যে আমি আল্লাহ মানি, রসুল মানি, কিন্তু আমার কালচার হলো হিন্দু কালচার। বুঝতে পেরেছ? কারণ কি? কারণ হিন্দুরাই তো এখানে কনভার্টেড হয়ে মুসলমান হয়েছে। এখানকার মুসলমান তো আর ওই আসমান থেকে আসে নাই। এখানে যারা মুসলমান তারা কিন্তু এখানে হিন্দু ছিল, তারা কনভার্টেড হয়ে মুসলমান হয়েছে। যেমন অনেক মানুষ মুসলমান থেকে খ্রিস্টান হয়ে গেছে, এখনো হচ্ছে বিভিন্ন জায়গায়। তো এইভাবে আমরা কি হলাম, ওয়ারেন হেস্টিংস এর আগে আমরা বলছিলাম যে আমরা আল্লাহ মানি, রসুল মানি, আমরা মুসলমান, কিন্তু আমাদের কালচার হলো হিন্দু। যার ফলে হিন্দুদের যে আনুষ্ঠানিকতাগুলো ছিল, সেগুলো কিন্তু এখানকার মুসলমানরাও মানত। এবং একটা এক্সাম্পল দেব, যে তুমি যদি আজমির শরীফে যাও, দেখবে ওখানে হিন্দুরাও যায়, মুসলমানরাও যায়। আমি মুম্বাইয়ে ওই হাজি আলীর মাজারে গেছি, দেখি হিন্দুরাও গেছে, মুসলমানরাও গেছে। এটা কিন্তু একটা ওই সময়ের ইতিহাস তোমাকে মনে করিয়ে দেবে যে হাউ ইউনাইটেড উই ওয়্যার, both Hindus and Muslims were united culturally. So culture is a very, very powerful force. It can unite different communities together. কাজে কালচারাল ইউনিটি খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ একটা বিষয়।
স্যার ইংরেজরা তো এজন্যই আগে ওই জায়গাটাতেই মানে হিট করেছে, পয়েন্ট করেছে।
ইয়েস, সেটাই আমি বলছি, কালচার এন্ড ইম্পেরিয়ালিজম পড়তে গেলে তোমার কিন্তু এটা জানতেই হবে। ইউ মাস্ট নো দিস হিস্ট্রি, তাছাড়া এটা পড়া হবে না সত্যিকার অর্থে।